stream. Okay, so Jeff, so this is a quick live stream to define to define two things. So first, what is our challenge and what is our offer? So my question first, Jeff, could you repeat very briefly, what is the issue? What are we trying to solve? What is it? What would you respond to that? In a very large sense, what are we trying to solve?
Our one-dimensional economies are basically maximizing for profit and optimizing out people and the planet in the process. And of course, we have certain measures, government regulation, among other standards that try to prevent this, but there are always loopholes. It's a very messy system, but ultimately we are maximizing for the one dimension of profit at the moment.
And who are we out? So which is against people and against something else you said?
The planet.
Okay.
So this is ecosystems, that we are cutting down or taking over.
Yeah.
The social component, people getting left behind by the current economic paradigm, all of that.
So it's one-dimensional, and we should be thinking multi-dimensional. Okay.
For sure. So there's all sorts of value that we have as humans that is not captured quantitatively by money, but if we fail to capture the value of those values, it gets taken over by an extractive for-profit industry. So with token bonding curves, for example, we can bond these values into local currencies.
Okay, before you get to token bonding curves and solutions, so I want to get that completely. So right now, we're failing to capture value. It gets taken over, you say that value, it gets extracted by companies and also by governments, I guess. Sometimes, or mostly not for-profit companies.
I mean, governments are effectively like a commons, a representative commons. We all pool our money as a nation and get things done. However, the game theoretical situation is awful. The effect of money on decisions made is awful. The way we only elect once every 4 years is awful with very little accountability. So, I mean, there are lots of problems or inefficiencies with that system. It's a good idea, but the way it's put together is...
Okay. So the part of that problem is that, right? There is not that balance because governments are there to make sure that it's not just that the value is extracted, and that governments are there to bring regulation, but they're failing at doing that. Why are they failing?
They are reactive rather than proactive. They're not able to keep up with the speed of our economic and technological development. Our decision-making systems are still stuck from 150 years ago or more, and they're not able to upgrade themselves.
Okay. So that is so the big issue that we're dealing with is what you normally summarize as the tragedy of the commons, and part of that is also the free rider problem, right?
Correct. Okay.
And the tragedy of the commons is that, right? Is a thing in a way that you just said that we are. Maybe you should say some more words, maybe specifically about the tragedy of the commons.
Sorry, I'm losing you there a bit. Did you say explain the tragedy of the commons? Or?
So you say what you've said right now is that companies are maximizing for profit. Governments are inefficient and reactive, so they're not keeping up with the speed of technology, etc. There's these two powers that are playing, and there is on the other side there are the people who are in these systems, in the economy, and governed by governments, those people are also for themselves doing stuff. They're trying to get value for themselves. So maybe it makes sense here that you explain a little bit more like how them as individuals trying to get value, how they're also contributing to like making the problem to the tragedy of the commons. Yes.
Right. So, I mean, humans respond to incentives, and that's not to say we're mice or robots or anything, but we follow the profit motive. The profit motive isn't in itself a bad thing. We want to accumulate resources for ourselves to be better off in the future. That's not a bad thing. The bad thing is when that leads to exploitation, extraction, and unsustainable behavior in general. So the tragedy of the commons is it occurs basically anytime someone can benefit personally more than the collective loses individually. So the traditional example is a field. If there are cows on the field, each farmer can have a certain number of cows before the field will be depleted of grass. So each farmer has one cow to start. The field has plenty of capacity. Each farmer is incentivized to add a cow because he doubles his number of cows, but the rest of the community only loses 1/10 of the grass, or 1/10 of the grass split among all of them, all of their cows. So the benefit to the farmer is greater than the loss to any other individual in that community. This sets up the problem of the dominant strategy of every farmer being adding another cow. If every farmer adds another cow, then the field is depleted. And this plays out across the fisheries industry, across resource extraction. There's all sorts of scenarios that you can see the tragedy of the commons playing out. And this is basically because we are not placing value on the commons. If we can create a commons pool that values the commons as a natural resource rather than as an extracted resource, then we can balance out that, we can use the profit motive to balance out the incentives. It is expensive for the farmer to put that extra cow on the field. Then we are producing value that the farmer has to overcome that value. It may still be worth it for him to get that cow, but it will be expensive for him to get that cow because it is causing resource depletion. So this is essentially a way that we can, it's not getting rid of the financial economy, it's augmenting it with, balancing it with valuing our commons resources and being able to decide how to allocate, how to judiciously use them, and so on.
Okay, cool. So let me see, because I want to see if this kind of summarizes our bigger context and challenge. And you can see if this needs to be ordered differently, but I'm going to just repeat some of the things you said, because I think this might be enough. You haven't mentioned right now, which I like, because I think it's an extra term that we might not need. You haven't talked directly about the free rider problem. And I don't mind, because it's explaining the tragedy of the commons. Do not assume that everyone knows that term. When I ask people, nobody knows, actually. I've asked so many people and they're always like, oh, never heard of it.
So this is another narrative arc. We need to start from the beginning. This what we're talking about right now is a series of articles, one on the tragedy of the commons. The free rider problem is basically the same thing. You know, it's a variant on that, or looking at it from the other perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, the open source incentivization problem, I think linking all of these problems to the commons is the first step we need to take, because most people don't understand the importance of the commons. And this is like, I remember watching Aaron Schwartz, the internet's own boy, you know, and that movie, he was all about the commons and open commons. And I didn't really understand. I was like, wow, that's so cool. This is a great mission. And like, I listened to what he was saying and I was like, that is really cool. But I didn't understand that this is the problem that underpins like the vast majority of human coordination problems. Like, I didn't draw that comparison. I was just like, oh, that's neat for the internet. No, this is like for everything. Enabled by the internet, enabled by blockchain, but this isn't a blockchain thing. This isn't an internet thing. This is an everything. And I didn't get that until I started digging into the blockchain. And I was like, what is this really useful for? And then I got here and I was like, oh shit, it's useful for this.
Indeed. And so 1 second, because I'm trying to put this in an order that might allow you to explain it very briefly, because that's what you will need to do on the stage and that you will need to do to like your friend.
Yes.
So hang on, I'm just typing something out, moving some notes around of everything that you just said. 1 second. Okay, and it's actually, I'm trying to put it in a way that in a duality that you've used a few times before. So what I've now done is, like, the context and the challenge that we're dealing with is, the big one is that we are in a situation. So first of all, we have the context that humans respond to incentives. So humans, it's something that we just do. We are humans, and everything that we build, we are maximizing for profit, which is one-dimensional. And this is not good for us. It's not good for the planet. We will do this. We will always try to find profit, which is not a bad thing in itself. Tragedy of the commons is something that is important in this context. It occurs when someone benefits more than a collective, which in the long term damages the individual benefit, which leads to resource depletion. Examples are climate change, global waste problems, and so on.
Yes.
So then the challenge that we're dealing with is human nature is what human nature is. So I just now put, like, it's not you, it's the systems.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So economies is a system that humans have invented two elements. Is the economies, and the economies are extractive. So they see value and they're taking it, and it goes to the shareholders and so on. On the other hand of the dichotomy, you have economies and you have governments. Governments are not fixing this. Governments should be there to protect us, to protect the people, but they're inefficient, they're reactive, they're not keeping up with the speed of technology. So we have a system failure. And if we want to fix this, if we want to make sure, the issue that we have with the system failure is that we are not placing enough value on the commons resources. Something is missing there, but whatever. We are not placing value on the commons resources. Incentives are not aligned, and we are killing our planet. We are killing ourselves because our systems are not working. That is the challenge that we are dealing with.
They are working. They're just not optimized because nobody built the economy. Like it is inherently like a self-organizing system, right? I mean, yes, we have money creation at the state level or at the monarch level or at the Canadian Tire level if you want, but they don't design the economy. It's the incentives that exist, and that's what makes it a decentralized coordination mechanism in a lot of ways. But now we can bound this economy. We can say these are the rules for this economy. You know what? You can have that one cow, but if you want a second cow, it's going to cost you a lot. So the resource depletion, any action that you take.
Oops, hang on. You're gone.
Deplete the community. There will be networks of commons.
Hang on, your stream was interrupted. Can you go? Yeah, can you go back like 10 sentences or something?
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
I was saying that.
So systems are working, but they are not optimized.
Right. I mean, capitalism is very effective. It's currently effective at burning the planet because we're optimized for growth, and GDP and debt-based economies. And I mean, it's not like anyone maliciously designed them this way. Everyone followed the incentives. The Wall Street bankers followed the incentives. The president follows the incentives. Everyone follows the incentives. It's not the people in the system. The 1% aren't assholes. We are the global 1%. That's another article we got to put out. We are the global 1%. The rest of the 99% of the world is looking at us being like, those guys are assholes. And we're just here like, hey, we can barely survive within our own systems. You know what? The people that we think have a lot of money can barely survive in their systems. Well, they're probably fine. But, you know, you have a yacht and you're jealous of the guy with the super yacht. You know, there's never enough money. Money is as strange as Griff says. You know, you can have too much of anything except money. You can have too many mangoes. It's a problem. They rot. You got to get rid of them. You try to get rid of them as quick as you can. But money, no problem. And that's where the scarcity mindset comes from as well.
Yes. So, okay. Hang on. Yes, okay, I'm going to put that last sentence in that summary, which is not really the summary. I'm going to put smaller because you need to do that. But I do think that it's starting to make sense that the context and the challenge is that we, as humans, we respond to incentives, but we maximize for profit and do this in a one-dimensional way, which causes a whole lot of issues and shit. The thing is, we are human, we are who we are, but our systems are not optimized in a multi-dimensional designed way, and this is not sustainable. So,
Exactly.
So maybe the summary is even just because I keep on believing it, that is a word that needs to come back. It is not sustainable. And everyone knows it, and everyone feels it. And that's the big discussion, and that is why all of us are in fucking blockchain, and that's what we need to be talking about. It's the only thing we need to be talking about, not about only a tech engineering commons. We need to be talking about the big picture, because even tech engineers are in it for the big picture.
Yeah.
And by the way, so that's why I love your sentence that you now put at the first slide. So, yeah. So, but that is not what we're going to do now. So first, I want to hear you rant a little bit more. We now went to, so we have now the challenge. We've defined the challenge. Hey, Kai. How do you know we were here, Kai?
You could smell it.
Yeah. Okay, so now tell me we have defined the challenge. Now tell me, Jeff, what is the solution that the common stack is offering? We've already have some words for it, but like, say it again. Give it to me.
Do you want me to give the hard example of the app, or you just want?
What is the thing that we are solving? Not with an app, just what we just said what the challenge is. How are we solving this?
Okay, I got it. So the common stack is multiple. It's a library of components, but these components can be used to. Okay, wait a sec. Let me think about this for a second. I'll ask them. Right. Okay. So the problem is we are currently working in one-dimensional, profit-driven economies. We are not able to value other things than the bottom dollar. So with unique crypto economic mechanisms like the bonding curve, we can bond the value or the estimated value of a commons resource into a local currency that serves that commons. So you could, in other words, a logging company sees zero value in a forest, but they see a lot of value in lumber. So by creating a commons around forests, as they are, and I mean, this is a bit of a high level example, there is now a value to the forest just for being a forest, which if the logging company wants to produce logs, which is fine, we need logs, but they have to pay into that commons to extract that resource. And that money that goes into the commons funds a regenerative action for the commons. We need lumber. Okay, it's cool. But for forests to have zero value and lumber to have a lot of value, we create this this instability that incentivizes extraction. And I mean, yes, we have protections, we have natural parks, we have et cetera, but we would achieve this goal far more effectively by balancing the market, because the market is the coordination mechanism. Having a market with a government intervening is just clunky, and there's loopholes, and it doesn't work well, and there's lobbying, and bad decisions are made, et cetera. If we can just balance the market by, when we create a commons pool, a funding pool, this is basically like the entire value of that commons, between the collateral behind the curve to the money in the funding pool. This is the value of that commons.
How can you summarize that? We need the thing that you just, because there you're going again into details. How can you were starting to say we need to balance the market by what?
We need to balance the market by valuing the commons. Okay. By valuing a forest. You know, right now you look at a forest, what is the value on that forest? It's probably worth the land it can be sold for. Mm-hmm. You know, there's no value for the forest as a forest. It's just there on our land. Someone's going to buy it and clear it and put it in a Costco warehouse. So we're basically creating a value for the commons, for a resource in this specific example, to balance out the value of the extracted resource. You know, coal in the ground is worth nothing. Coal in the back of a truck going to a factory to get shipped and so on is worth money to the company. So, I mean, we're basically balancing out that imbalance in our current extractive economy.
Yeah, makes sense. And so the high thing is like, it makes sense to me if you already just say we need to balance the market by valuing the commons. That is maybe even a sentence that summarizes it, because you have to be able to say that somewhere on your slide. And how you do that, one of the things that you said before is like, we do this by creating instant liquidity for any project, right?
So the reason that it works, so I mean, we're essentially, every commons will have its own currency. And commons could be global, they could be local. I could have my own commons, you know, we could have a commons together. It's any idea can be a commons, you know, we could have a like, whatever. I won't go into examples, but the important thing with local currencies is that they can be exchanged for other currencies. If they can't, they're as good as worthless. Because you and I may have our own currency, and if no one else ever takes that currency, then that currency has no value except to you and I. But if we can sell that currency for another currency, all of a sudden anybody can use it. And you just create this web of interconnected value systems, currencies, which are bonded. They're not just, each currency has a different value bonded to it. One of them values trees as a raw resource. One of them could value coal in the ground. One of them could value trash cleanup. One of them could value justice. Who knows what we can do with these things? Like you can bond that value into the currency, but the fact that the currency is liquid to all other currencies makes it a viable, usable currency.
Indeed.
Because we don't have that in the crypto space right now. Mm-hmm. You can go on an exchange and sell one for another, sure, but the markets are manipulable. They're awful. They're, you know, wash trading, and people are just putting in crazy buys and crazy sells to pump and dump, and that's going to happen until there's liquidity. Liquidity comes with the bonding curve. Mm-hmm. And everyone needs one.
Everyone needs one. You need one. You get one. Everyone gets one. Put a picture of Oprah in there somewhere.
Let's do it. This is our article, Ro.
Yeah, for sure. In the article, we can put in an animation, a GIF.
Roadmap, by the way. Sorry, I missed that.
You missed what?
Should I run through the Uber of trash cleanup for the video so we can capture it?
Yes, do that. But I'm not gonna put that one in the presentation notes because we don't need it here. But do go ahead.
Yeah.
Tell me how now. Tell me, Jeff. Indeed, like how can we do this? What will this look like? So let's skip the technical part. What will this mean in a real life situation?
Okay, so if we go with a popular example, which was the example I started with, and also actually CleanApp has written extensively about this, and they basically described this system already. We're just adding on the bonding curve and the kind of the positive feedback cycles of capitalism, essentially, but we are realigning the incentive to produce value in the way that that community sees fit. So we'll go with trash cleanup.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine you have an app, and this is like the Uber of trash cleanup.
Mm-hmm.
So you walk around, you're walking your dog, you see a big pile of trash in the park. You open your app, you take a picture. This already exists, by the way. There's open litter maps, there's Literati, there's a bunch of different ones, which is cool. You can log a trash complaint. Now, what's different with our system is you could then create a proposal for cleanup and vote for that cleanup with your Trash Hero coins. Your THC is also a voting right, because this, when you buy into this Commons, you are now a co-owner and a co-member. Your THC coins are not just your voting power; they're also your ownership stake. They're also your currency within this Commons. So the proposal then goes to vote. Everyone can see it. Maybe people in your community are like, yeah, that should be cleaned up. And they also vote with their THC coins with conviction voting. As soon as the proposal gains enough conviction, it passes. As soon as the proposal passes, the app pings a couple of users. It says, hey, ping, there's a bounty in your neighborhood, 100 Trash Hero coin if you clean it up. Some users say, yep, I'll go clean it up. Okay, so it goes out to 2 or 3 people. They go out and they clean it up. And then they hit the button on the app saying, okay, it's cleaned. I'd like to collect my 100 Trash Hero coin. Then the app says, okay, that's wonderful. We are sending your transfer, but we're going to hold on to it in escrow for a minute because we need to verify that this work was actually done. So transaction pending. So the app pings 3 other users nearby and says, hey, we have a job for you. Can you verify that this work was done cleaning up this trash on this site? Verifiers go out, check it out, and they hit either confirm or deny. If there is unanimous agreement, then the transfer goes through and everybody gets paid for their work in THC. If there is disagreement between the verifiers, if 1 or 2 said, no, that didn't happen, and 1 said yes, the system could log the behavior of these verifiers and see, determine if there are bad actors among them that are trying to deceive the system. And then it puts out a ping to a larger group of verifiers, maybe 5 or 7 or 9, who come out and verify. And again, there's some quorum and percent that is acceptable, and then the verification is done. And in that way, everyone is basically earning ownership by working in this economy. It puts labor on par with capital, rather than in our current economies, capital is above labor. It gets to decide how labor goes with the stagnation in wage rates since the 70s. More and more power is accrued to capital, and this is the 99% versus the 1% problem. And in these systems, we are basically putting labor and capital in a circular flow, because as people participate in these communities, they earn ownership, they earn governance, they earn THC. They have more stake in the say because they're dedicated members of the community, so their vote provides more conviction. If their network graph, their trust graph, their liquid democracy graph, in this network shows their commitment and their expertise in these matters. So you have people delegating votes to people they trust. If I'm very involved in the Trash Hero community, for example, and you're only minorly involved, perhaps you delegate your vote to me, indicating that I am, an established, trusted member of this community. And of course, if I start making decisions that you don't like, because of course this app will say, hey, ping, your delegate, Jeff, voted this way on this. Do you agree? And you can say, yes, I do, or no, I want to move my vote to someone else, or cast it myself. And this just removes all of these Like it makes governance liquid. It's a liquid democracy. You know, we can effectively, quickly respond to issues in our systems without having to, you know, wait 4 years and go through a difficult political process that is about 100 different issues and no one can agree because we're just voting between this color or that color. And every issue falls under one color, and it's just ridiculous. And no one can make decisions. And even if they do, 4 years later, the other side comes in and undoes it.
Indeed. I like it. I like especially the extra sentence I've written down here is we're putting labor and capital in a circular flow. I like that one. The fact of like the balancing out of labor and capital. You haven't really touched upon that too much up till now, and it's a simple way to also explain it that we are balancing the market.
I feel like we just it needs to be said in its place, and this is honestly the stuff that's like gumming up my mind because I need to get through this stuff and figure out. So this is the long blurb. Like, how long we've been talking now, you know, about this specifically. We really need to distill it into the core problems, because people know about like the 1%, the 99%. People, you know, and those are the points we need to tie that in to. Like, okay, it's not just capital flows into labor. It's labor, capital, labor, capital, labor, capital, because the people who are working in these ecosystems are earning. It is like a platform cooperative. It is a co-owned, co-governed, like it's the proper UBI. Like, that's how UBI will actually work through these systems, because a UBI from the government would just basically be a capitalist stipend to continue spending in an extractive economy. That doesn't solve the issue. It's just money for people to, like, it's shut up money. It's not sustainable. And governments have all these, you know, game theoretic and bureaucratic inefficiencies and bloat. And, you know, we basically need to embed the government into the market. Like, not the government, but like the regulation, proper regulation. It's not even regulation, it's system design.
Yep.
It's not saying, you know, you can't do this open market. It's saying, no, here's like what the market is defined and designed to be able to do. And look at these simulations that show this is how it actually behaves. And now let's test a small one and see how it happens.
Indeed.
This is really like, it's a new method of market coordination with like sustainability baked in.
Yes.
I mean, you could also bake in unsustainability if you wanted to. You know, that's the funny thing, is that you could bake anything in. You could make a gun commons, you know. So there is the downside to this, of course. And the question ultimately is, do you believe people are on the whole better or worse? You know, are people going to create more good commons or more bad commons? It's the same thing with the website, you know, with the internet. As soon as the internet came out, oh, well, all the pedophiles can create a website. Yes, they can, and they have, and they're out there, but they're still pretty fringe, and the cops are chasing them down whenever they can find them. So, like, I mean, these economies will exist too, because we are basically giving people the ability to strap an economy onto their community or onto their cause. So yes, these can be used for terrible purposes as well, no doubt. But if I had a Trash Hero Commons, I would say, hey, I vote to all Trash Hero holders that we do not allow any economic activity with the pedophile commons. We do not accept their coin. We do not want their coin, because we frankly think that is against our value system, and we set an economic blockade on this commons. Also the fascist commons, also the racist commons, whatever. People can create these, right? Because it's permissionless. You can create one for anything that values hate speech, that values terrorism. You'll have terrorist economies, for sure.
Jeff is having connectivity issues.
Sure, just like you have terrorists. What do we do when we're pissed off at countries? We say, oh, Iran, you're being an ass. We're going to economically sanction you, which sucks. I mean, it hurts Iran, but it hurts the innocents in Iran most of all. It hurts the poor in Iran most of all. And yeah, the leaders are inconvenienced and whatever else. Yeah, it may end in capitulation eventually, but we can directly economically sanction the ideas we don't like. You know, you don't like fascism? Well, I bet you the market cap of fascism would be very, 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 very small compared to the market cap of love or hope or forests or, you know, recycling or trash cleanup. Like you have an economy around any driver of human action. Like you could create a love commons. You could say, hey, go out and hug someone. You get paid 5 hug tokens. Like, whatever you want to do.
That's true. And you're saying, by the way, very similar things to what I've heard before in the Swarm City discussions. Like there will be all sorts of economies, and these others will exist, but people will not really invest in those because it will be a small one.
It's opt-in, right? You now have a choice. In our current economies today, you can't leave. If you live in Canada, you have to pay Canadian taxes in Canadian dollars. There's no opt-out. But you do not have to stay in the fascist economy. If you're like, oh, well, I don't like this economy, I'm going to leave, that economy shrinks by the value that you bring to that. So, I mean, if there are 10 people in an economy versus 10 million, you know, the economy size is obviously very different. So the whole point is these, like the value, that the market signal of the commons, the value in that commons tells you, I mean, how popular that commons is. And I believe that people will gravitate to commons that treat them fairly and equitably versus commons that treat them not fairly and not equitably like we have today. I think people will choose to vote with their feet and move towards the commons that best serve them. And cool. I believe that those are the commons that will best serve everybody.
I agree. And okay, wrap this up. We'll wrap this up now, because otherwise you're going to spend all your energy on explaining also what the consequences could be, and we're not going to use that. It's thoughts and philosophical discussions that go beyond the scope of what we wanted to do here. So I'm going to cut you off so that you save some energy. So this is very valuable. So what I propose now is what I've done is, what I've done is what I told you before. So we have now on the slide of context and challenge, the why, we have a number of points. What you could do is not make this longer, but try to make this even more concise and really say, like, because this is Chris's words, now it needs to become Jeff's words, but it can be written out in a way, in the sense that if this is sent to a Sherman or to someone else, that she can read this and really get the main points with some of the sub-arguments of what you want to say. The same thing with the next slide, which is, what solution does the common stack offer? And this can be, so I've kept your like open new forms of collaboration in there, but I've moved it a bit to the bottom. I just now summarize it. We need to balance the market by valuing the commons, and it will offer instant liquidity for any project, and la 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 la. So if you succeed in getting those slides to in like, what is the issue, what is the challenge, and what is our solution, and you try to have these with a number of main bullet points and some sub points, then that is enough for someone to read and to understand. That would be amazing. What we can then do is have a call with JP's designer and say we want to go ahead. Yeah.
About that, he's not available until August 27th.
Okay, but that's fine. It doesn't matter. We could
The only other option that we could do, and I'm not saying that we should do, is like find one on whatever, Fiverr or Twitter or however you find visual people. It's really a shame that we're not going to have that, because I feel like these ideas that we are talking, this rant that we just gave, like that could actually, you know what, maybe we should just even send that video to, I'll get Roberto's name or number, or I think it's just Robert. We send it to JP and be like, hey, can you forward this to Robert?
By the way, I'm going to stop this one because it has that essence. Yep.